The rain fell like bullets on the cracked pavement, but Maya Rodriguez barely felt it. Her daughter's small hand trembled in hers as they stood outside the boarded-up motel. The final door in a city full of locked ones now slammed in their faces. Sophia's backpack stuffed with everything they owned, pressed against Maya's hip, a constant reminder of how far they'd fallen. The eviction notice was still in her pocket, wrinkled and damp. 3 days. That's how long they'd been sleeping in her beaten Toyota, parked in different lots each night, praying no one would notice. But the car had finally died that morning, coughing its last breath in an alley she didn't recognize. Now they had nothing. Nowhere. No one. Sophia's voice cracked. "Where are we going to sleep tonight?" Maya opened her mouth, but the lie wouldn't come. She had no answer. The shelters were full. Her mother's house was gone, sold to pay for treatments that hadn't saved her. Friends had scattered when the bills started piling up. She was invisible in this city, just another Latino woman the world had learned to look past. That's when she heard the footsteps. Expensive shoes on wet concrete. A voice like smoke and steel. "You look lost." 3 weeks earlier, Maya Rodriguez had perfected the art of invisible exhaustion. She moved through Romano's Italian restaurant with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned that speed meant survival, her olive skin glistening slightly under the warm overhead lights as she balanced 3 plates along her forearms. The lunch rush was brutal on Thursdays. Businessmen who tipped poorly and spoke to her like she was part of the furniture. A man snapped his fingers at her. "We've been waiting 10 minutes for water." She'd filled his glass 4 minutes ago. She knew because she'd timed it. But Maya simply smiled, the smile that never reached her eyes, but kept her employed, and said, "Right away, sir." The truth was, she'd been awake for 22 hours straight. Her shift at the hospital cafeteria had run until 3 a.m. because Janet called in sick again. Then she'd driven across town to her second job at the dry cleaners, working the early morning shift from 4 to noon. Now she was here, and she'd be here until closing at 11 o'clock. Then home to Sophia, asleep at Mrs. Patterson's apartment. The elderly neighbor who watched her daughter for $20 a day. Maya could barely afford. 1 more month, she told herself. 1 more month, and I'll have enough for the deposit on a better apartment. 1 more month, and Sophia can have her own room again. It was a lie she told herself to keep moving. Mama works real hard, Sophia had told her teacher last week. According to the note Maya had found in her backpack, she's always tired, but she says we're going to be okay. I believe her because mamas don't lie. Maya had cried in the bathroom for 5 minutes, then washed her face and gone to her next shift. She was clearing table 7 when she felt it. That prickle on the back of her neck that meant someone was watching. Not the usual male gaze she'd learned to deflect. Something different. Something that made her skin tighten with awareness. She turned. The man sat alone in the corner booth, the one management reserved for special guests. He hadn't been there 2 minutes ago. Maya would have noticed. He was the kind of man you noticed, not because he demanded attention, but because he commanded it without effort. Korean, she thought, with sharp features and eyes so dark they looked black from across the room. He wore a suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months, charcoal gray with a subtle sheen. His hair was perfectly styled, pushed back from his face, a thin scar cut through his left eyebrow. But it was his stillness that unsettled her. Everyone in the restaurant was moving, eating, talking, checking phones. He sat motionless, watching her with an intensity that made her fingers tremble against the plates she carried. "Table 12 wants their check," Diego hissed as he passed. "And the guy in the corner, that's Alexander Chun, owns half the buildings in Koreatown, maybe more. Don't screw this up." Maya's stomach tightened. She knew that name. Everyone who worked in this part of Chicago knew that name, though people only whispered it. Alexander Chun didn't own buildings. He controlled them, controlled the businesses inside them, controlled the people who worked there. The Korean mob operated in shadows, but their shadow fell across entire neighborhoods. She forced herself to approach his table, order pad ready. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Not because he was threatening, though something dangerous lurked beneath that expensive exterior, but because of the way he looked at her, like he was reading a book written on her bones. "Good afternoon," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Can I start you with something to drink? Whiskey neat. The hibiki, if they have it." His voice was deep, accented, but clear and expensive, like everything else about him. I'll check with the bar. You're tired. Maya froze. Excuse me. You're exhausted. I can see it in your eyes. How many jobs do you work? The question was so unexpected, so intimate that Maya forgot to deflect. That's I don't think 3. He tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. No, more than 3. You have a child. I can see the crayon stain on your sleeve you try to wash out, and you're working yourself to death for them. Something hot and defensive flared in Maya's chest. My personal life isn't sit down. I'm working. I'm a customer requesting service. Sit down. There was steel beneath the smooth words. Not a threat, but absolute certainty that he would be obeyed. Maya glanced toward Diego, who was watching with wide eyes, then carefully lowered herself into the booth across from this stranger who saw too much. What do you want? She asked quietly. Your name? Maya Rodriguez. Maya, he said it slowly like he was tasting it. Beautiful name. Spanish origin. Your parents chose. Well, my grandmother chose it. She was from Guatemala. Passed 5 years ago. Maya didn't know why she was telling him this. Didn't know why she hadn't walked away. And your daughter Sophia? She's 7. Father gone. The word came out harder than she intended. Left when she was 2. Hasn't sent a dime since. Alexander Chin nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected. You're drowning, Maya Rodriguez. Working multiple jobs, barely sleeping, sacrificing everything for a child who needs you alive more than she needs you exhausted. How long can you keep this up? As long as I have to. Maya lifted her chin. We're managing. No, you're surviving. There's a difference. What do you want from me? The question came out sharper now, edged with desperation she couldn't quite hide. Why are you asking me these things? He leaned back, that intense gaze never leaving her face. I have a proposition for you. I'm not interested in not that kind of proposition. His mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. I need someone I can trust in my home. Someone to manage my household, cooking, cleaning, ensuring things run smoothly. The pay is $15,000 a month. You'd live on the property. Your daughter would have her own room, access to private tutors if you wish, health insurance, security. Maya's heart hammered. $15,000 a month. That was more than she made in 6 months working 3 jobs. Why me? Because you're desperate enough to say yes, but honest enough not to steal from me. Because you work hard. Because your daughter deserves better than watching her mother work herself into an early grave. He pulled a business card from his pocket, sliding it across the table. Think about it. You have until tomorrow to decide. I don't even know you. No, but I know you, Maya Rodriguez. I know you're 3 months behind on rent. I know your car needs repairs you can't afford. I know you go to bed hungry so your daughter can eat. I know you're one emergency away from complete disaster. He stood, straightening his suit jacket. I'm offering you a lifeline. What you do with it is your choice. He walked away before she could respond. Leaving the business card and a $100 bill on the table, Maya stared at the card. Heavy card stock, embossed lettering, an address in Lincoln Park, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Chicago. Diego appeared at her elbow. Did he just offer you a job? I think so. Maya's voice sounded distant in her own ears. Diego's expression was serious now. Alexander Chin isn't he's not like other rich guys. There are stories, dark stories. If you work for him, I know. She tucked the card into her apron pocket. I know exactly who he is. But as she finished her shift, as she drove to pick up Sophia from Mrs. Patterson's apartment, as she opened her mail to find another past due notice and a letter from her landlord threatening eviction, Maya kept touching that card in her pocket. A room for Sophia. Security. She was drowning. He'd been right about that, and she was so tired of fighting the current alone. That night, after Sophia fell asleep, Maya sat at their tiny kitchen table and stared at Alexander Chin's business card. She thought about her daughter's worn shoes, the medication she couldn't afford for her chronic asthma, the way Sophia never complained, never asked for anything because she'd learned too young that mama couldn't afford extras. She thought about the way Alexander Chun had looked at her, not with pity, but with something else. Recognition, maybe like he understood what it meant to fight battles no one else could see. Maya picked up her phone. Her hands shook as she dialed the number on the card. He answered on the first ring. I knew you'd call, Alexander Chin said. Because you're a survivor, Maya Rodriguez. And survivors know when to accept help. A pause. Come to the address on the card tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring your daughter. I want to meet her. Alexander Chun, if you're going to live in my home, we should be on a first-name basis. The line went dead. Maya sat in the darkness of her apartment, listening to Sophia breathe in the next room, and wondered if she'd just made a deal with the devil, or if the devil was the only one willing to help her. The house wasn't a house. It was a fortress disguised as luxury. Maya stood on the circular driveway, Sophia's hand gripped tightly in hers, staring up at the three-story mansion that sprawled across a manicured estate. Iron gates, security cameras every 20 feet, men in dark suits stationed at discreet positions around the property, guards trying and failing to look like groundskeepers. "Mama," Sophia whispered, her eyes huge. "Is this a palace?" "Something like that, baby." The massive front door opened before Maya could knock. A woman in her 50s, Korean with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, smiled warmly. "You must be Maya. I'm Mrs. Park. I manage the household staff. Please come in." The interior was all clean lines and expensive simplicity. Marble floors, modern art that probably cost more than Maya's entire existence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden that looked professionally maintained. Everything was pristine, cold, beautiful, and utterly lifeless. No photographs, no personal touches, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived here. "Alexander is in his study," Mrs. Park said. "He's expecting you. Sophia, would you like some juice and cookies while your mother talks with him?" Sophia looked up at Maya, seeking permission. Maya nodded, and her daughter followed Mrs. Park down a hallway, glancing back twice to make sure her mother was still there. Maya walked toward the study alone, her worn sneakers silent on the marble. She felt shabby in her best jeans and cleanest blouse, painfully aware of how much she didn't belong in this world. Alexander Chin stood by the window, backlit by morning sun, hands in his pockets. He'd shed the suit jacket. His white dress shirt was rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with muscle and a tattoo she couldn't quite make out. He looked younger in this light. Less corporate kingpin, more dangerous man playing dress-up. "You came," he said without turning. "You're paying me $15,000 a month to clean your house." "Of course I came." Now he turned, and his mouth curved. That almost smile again. "It's not just cleaning. It's managing the household. Overseeing the staff, making sure everything runs smoothly, cooking when I have guests." Maya crossed her arms. "You mean business associates, among others?" The smile widened. "Smart girl. Yes, business associates. People who require discretion. People who shouldn't be asked questions or discussed with outsiders. Are you comfortable with that?" Maya thought about Sophia's asthma inhaler, about the eviction notice, about sleeping in her car. "I'm comfortable with feeding my daughter and keeping a roof over her head." Alexander studied her for a long moment. "You understand what this is, don't you? You understand who I am. You're a dangerous man who controls territory and people. You hurt those who cross you. You have enemies who would use anyone close to you as leverage." Maya met his gaze steadily. "And you're offering me protection in exchange for loyalty. That's the deal, isn't it?" "Exactly." He moved closer, and Maya forced herself not to step back. "I don't make idle promises, Maya Rodriguez. If you work for me, if you live under my protection, nothing and no one will touch you or your daughter. But in return, you belong to this household. You don't discuss my business. You don't entertain guests without permission. You don't leave the property without security. Your life becomes very small, very controlled." Maya thought of the past 3 years, working herself to exhaustion, watching Sophia grow up in poverty, always one disaster away from losing everything. "How small is my life already?" she asked quietly. "At least this cage comes with medical insurance." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition of a kindred spirit. The tour of the house revealed luxury Maya had only seen in magazines. Sophia's room was bigger than their entire apartment, complete with a 4-poster bed, built-in bookshelves, and a window seat overlooking the garden. Sophia bounced on the mattress, eyes bright with wonder. "Is this really mine, Mama? If we decide to stay here?" "Yes, baby." Maya's own room was adjacent, elegantly appointed with a sitting area and private bathroom. The marble tub alone was bigger than their old kitchen. "I don't expect you to start immediately," Alexander said as they finished the tour. "Take the weekend. Move your belongings. Let Sophia adjust. Monday you begin." He handed her a key ring. "House, your rooms, the security system. The guards know you're authorized now. And Maya, this isn't a trial period. Once you commit, you're family. Family doesn't abandon each other. The weight of those words settled over Maya like a cloak. Heavy, warm, protective, and suffocating all at once. Moving day was simple when you owned almost nothing. 2 duffel bags of clothes, a box of Sophia's books and toys, a framed photo of Maya's grandmother. Everything else had been sold or left behind. Mrs. Park helped them settle in, showing Maya the kitchen, the laundry, the daily routines that kept the house running. There were 3 other staff members, a gardener, a driver, and a security coordinator, all Korean, all polite but distant. They treated Maya with careful respect, but made it clear she was an outsider. Sophia adapted with the resilience of childhood. She explored the garden, befriended Mrs. Park, and claimed the library as her personal kingdom. For the first time in years, she had space to be a child instead of a witness to her mother's struggle. Alexander was a ghost in his own house the first week. Maya heard him on phone calls, speaking rapid Korean, his voice cold and authoritative. She caught glimpses of him leaving early in expensive suits, returning late smelling of cigarettes and danger. He didn't eat the meals she prepared, surviving on coffee and whatever he grabbed on the run. It bothered her more than it should have. On Thursday night, Maya made her grandmother's recipe for pozole, rich and complex, filling the house with warmth. She was cleaning up when Alexander appeared in the kitchen doorway, tie loose, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking more tired than dangerous. "That smells incredible," he said. "You haven't eaten today," Maya replied without looking up. "Mrs. Park mentioned you missed lunch again." "I've been busy." "Sit down. I'll make you a bowl." She didn't ask permission, just ladled the soup, added fresh cilantro and lime, placed it in front of him with warm tortillas. Alexander stared at the food like he'd forgotten what home cooking looked like. Maya leaned against the counter, watching him take the first careful spoonful. His eyes closed briefly. "When was the last time someone cooked for you?" she asked quietly. "Really cooked, not just ordered from a restaurant." "Years." His voice was rough. "My mother used to make soup like this. Different recipe, same love." Maya felt something shift between them, some invisible wall cracking just slightly. "Tell me about her." "She died when I was 12. Cancer. After that, it was just survival. Foster homes, the streets, eventually finding a family that took me in. Not a family like yours." Alexander looked up at her. "A family that taught me power was the only thing that mattered. Love made you weak." Maya sat down across from him. "You don't believe that anymore, do you?" "I didn't," he said carefully. "Until recently. Until I had something to lose." The meaning hung between them, unspoken but understood. The next morning, Alexander knocked on Maya's door early. "Get Sophia. We're going somewhere." The somewhere was a private medical facility, where a pediatric specialist examined Sophia thoroughly, prescribed the best asthma medication money could buy, and gave Maya more information about her daughter's condition than she'd received in 7 years of clinic visits. In the car afterward, Sophia chattering excitedly about the doctor's fish tank, Maya found herself studying Alexander's profile. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Because I can," he replied. "Because your daughter deserves the best care possible. Because watching you worry about her breathing at night was keeping me awake." The admission was so quiet Maya almost missed it. That night, after Sophia was asleep, Maya found Alexander in his study, working late as usual. She knocked on the doorframe. "Excuse me." He looked up, tired but alert. "Come in." "Close the door." Maya stepped inside, suddenly nervous. The study was all dark wood and leather, intimidatingly masculine, but personal in a way the rest of the house wasn't. Books, awards, photographs of Alexander with various officials and businessmen. "I wanted to thank you." "For today?" "For Sophia." "You don't need to thank me," he said, setting aside his papers. "She's a good kid. She deserves to be healthy." Maya moved closer to his desk. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. I might not answer." "What made you offer me this job?" "Really? You could have hired any housekeeper, anyone to manage your home. Why me?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those dark eyes. "Because when I saw you in that restaurant, I saw myself. Someone fighting impossible odds, alone, protecting the only thing that mattered. Because you had strength that couldn't be bought or intimidated. Because your love for your daughter reminded me what it felt like to care about something more than power." His voice dropped. "Because I've spent 15 years building walls around myself, and somehow you walked through them in 5 minutes. Maya's breath caught. Alexander, that's dangerous talk for both of us. I know. He stood, moving around the desk until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I know this complicates everything. I know I have no right to feel anything for you beyond professional respect. But I can't help it, Maya. From the moment you sat across from me in that restaurant and looked at me without fear, like I was just a man instead of a monster, I was lost. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. We can't. The reasons tumbled out. I work for you. You're involved in things that could get us killed. Sophia needs stability, not chaos. You're right. Alexander's hands found her waist, gentle but possessive. About all of it. But Maya, when have the smart choices ever mattered when it comes to the heart? Maya looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd saved her daughter's life, who made her feel seen and valued and treasured for the first time in years. She thought about Sophia, safe and healthy. About the future that stretched ahead, uncertain but full of possibilities she'd never dared imagine. Whatever this is between us. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But for once in my life, I want something just for me, not for survival, not out of desperation, because I choose it. Alexander's hands framed her face like she was something precious. You deserve better than me. Let me decide what I deserve. He kissed her again, slower, this time, deeper, full of promises neither could voice. When they finally pulled apart, Alexander stood, offering his hand. Come with me. To my room. I want to hold you. Just hold you. Fall asleep with you in my arms like a normal person instead of a man who can't remember the last time he wasn't alone. His expression was vulnerable. Tell me no if you need to. I'll understand. But if you say yes. Maya took his hand standing. They walked upstairs together, hands clasped, two broken people seeking wholeness in each other. In his bedroom, which she'd cleaned a dozen times but never truly seen, Alexander undressed to his undershirt and boxers, then held the covers open in invitation. Maya slipped out of her jeans down to her tank top and underwear, hyper-aware of her own vulnerability. But when she climbed into bed beside him, Alexander simply wrapped his arms around her and pulled her against his chest. Sleep, he murmured into her hair. I'll keep watch. And for the first time in 7 years, Maya fell asleep, feeling safe, protected, treasured. Outside the window, dawn approached. And in that mansion full of expensive things and dangerous secrets, two people found something money couldn't buy and power couldn't create. They found each other. 3 days later, everything fell apart. Maya was in the kitchen preparing dinner when the front door slammed open, shouting, running feet. Then Alexander's voice, cold and lethal. Get them out now. Mrs. Park appeared in the doorway, face pale. Take Sophia and go to your rooms. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. What's happening? Please, Maya, trust me. Maya ran, found Sophia in the garden, grabbed her hand, pulled her upstairs. Sophia's questions. Mama, what's wrong? Why are you scared? Went unanswered as Maya locked them in her bedroom, barricading the door with furniture. Through the floor, she heard voices. Angry, threatening. Someone speaking Korean. Rapid fire and furious. Then Alexander responding in the same language. Each word sharp as a blade. A gunshot. Sophia screamed. Maya pulled her daughter close, covering her ears, heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. Silence. Terrible, heavy silence. Then footsteps on the stairs. Coming closer, Maya positioned herself between the door and Sophia, prepared to fight with everything she had if someone tried to hurt her daughter. Alexander's voice, muffled through the door. It's me. Open up. She moved the furniture with shaking hands, unlocked the door. Alexander stood there, blood spattered across his white shirt, gun in one hand. His eyes were wild, dangerous, but when he saw them safe, some terrible tension left his shoulders. Are you hurt? He asked, voice rough. No, we're fine. What happened? Business disagreement. It's handled. The blood. Whose blood? Not mine. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I need you to pack. Now. Tonight. You and Sophia are leaving. Maya's heart stopped. Leaving? Where? I have a safe house in the suburbs. You'll stay there until this blows over. How long? I don't know. Alexander set the gun on her dresser, ran bloody hands through his hair. Could be weeks. Could be longer. I won't lie to you, Maya. What happened tonight was a warning. Next time they come, they'll come for you and Sophia to get to me. Maya felt her world tilting. The safety she'd finally found, the home they'd built, the fragile beginning of something beautiful, all of it crumbling. Who are they? The Lee family. They want territory I control. They think taking what I care about will make me weak, force me to negotiate. Will it? Alexander looked at her for a long moment, and Maya saw the truth in his eyes before he spoke it. Yes, it will. Because I love you. Both of you. And that's exactly why you have to go. The safe house was a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet suburb, comfortable but isolated. No neighbors close enough to overhear, no social connections to trace. 2 bodyguards, polite Korean men who maintained constant surveillance. Sophia hated it immediately. She missed the garden, missed Mrs. Park, missed the life they'd barely begun. Maya hated it too, but for different reasons. The waiting was agony. Days passed without word from Alexander. The bodyguard spoke minimal English, gave no updates. Maya imagined him dead, captured, or worse, deciding they were too much trouble to protect. When he finally appeared 2 weeks later, Maya almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, developed new lines around his eyes, moved with the careful stillness of a man who'd been pushed to his breaking point. "Mama," Sophia shrieked, throwing herself into his arms. "I missed you so much. Did you bring Mrs. Park?" "Next time," he promised, hugging her tight. "I missed you too, little one." Maya held back, studying his face. "How bad is it?" "Bad. 3 more attempts to get to the house. 2 of my men dead. The Lees are escalating faster than expected. How much longer? Until I end this. One way or another." Alexander set Sophia down, turned to Maya. "Can we talk?" Alone. They walked to the small backyard while Sophia played inside. Alexander stopped by the fence, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. "I might not survive this," he said without preamble. "If something happens to me, there's money set aside. Enough to take care of you and Sophia for life. You'll be free to go anywhere, start over, be safe." Maya stared at him. "You're talking like you've already given up." "Not given up. Being realistic. The Lees have twice my manpower, connections I can't match. Unless I do something drastic, they'll eventually wear me down. And you're considering something drastic." Alexander's smile was sharp and terrible. "I'm considering burning their entire organization to the ground, even if it takes me with it." Maya stepped closer, anger flaring. "So that's your solution? Suicide by gang war. Leave Sophia without the closest thing to a father she's ever known. Leave me without you." "Alexander, that's not justice. It's just ego." His eyes flashed. "You think this is about ego? They've threatened the only family I've ever had. They think they can use you to control me, hurt you to hurt me. I won't let that happen. Even if it means making Sophia an orphan again." The words hit him like a slap. Maya saw him flinch, saw the recognition of what he was doing, what he was choosing. "There has to be another way," she said quietly. "Some way to end this without destroying everything we've built. I've tried everything else. Negotiation, intimidation, strategic strikes. They want war, Maya, and they want me to suffer first. Then don't give them what they want." Alexander stared at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe the smart play isn't to be the monster they expect. Maybe it's time to be the man Sophia thinks you are. The man who builds instead of destroys." Maya took his hands, noting the scars, the calluses, the strength that had protected her. "You told me you had everything and nothing before we came into your life. Power without purpose. What if this is your chance to find a different kind of power? The kind that builds families instead of empires?" For 3 days, Alexander disappeared again. Maya paced the safe house, teaching Sophia new card games, reading to her, trying to hide her own fear. Then the phone rang. Mrs. Park's voice, excited and tearful. "Come home," she said. "Come home now." The mansion looked different when they arrived. Cleaner somehow, despite already being pristine. Lighter. The oppressive atmosphere of danger that had always lurked in the shadows was gone. Alexander waited in the foyer, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. He looked younger, less dangerous, more like the man who'd held her while she slept. "What happened?" Maya asked. "I made a deal. With the government. My territory, my contacts, my information, in exchange for immunity and a new life. The Lees are finished. Half of them are in federal custody. The other half are too busy covering their own tracks to worry about revenge. Alexander's smile was real this time, reaching his eyes. I'm out, Maya. Completely out. It's over. Sophia launched herself at him, and he caught her, spinning her around while she squealed with delight. The three of them stood there in the marble foyer of the mansion that was no longer a fortress, just a home, and Maya felt something she'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope for the future. 6 months later, Alexander Chun was a legitimate businessman, using his connections and knowledge to build a security consulting firm that specialized in helping other people escape dangerous situations. The mansion was still theirs, but it felt different now. Warm, full of laughter. Sophia's friends from her new school came for playdates. Mrs. Park had stayed, becoming more grandmother than employee. Maya managed Alexander's business affairs, using skills she'd never known she had. They were a family in every way that mattered, though they'd never formally discussed what they meant to each other. That conversation came on a warm evening in May. Sophia was at a sleepover, the house was quiet, and Maya found Alexander in the garden, reading. She'd been thinking about this moment for weeks, working up the courage. Alexander, she said, settling beside him on the bench. Yes, I love you. He looked up from his book, smiled that rare, full smile that transformed his face. I love you too. Have for months. But Maya, we both know love isn't always enough. The criminal life is behind us, but the scars remain. The memories. I wake up sometimes forgetting you're safe. I see strangers at Sophia's school, and my first instinct is still to assess them as threats. Maybe that never goes away. Maya took his book, set it aside, turned to face him fully. Do you remember what you told me about your mother's soup? How it was made with love? Yes, love doesn't fix everything, Alexander. But it makes everything worth fixing. She took his hands. We're both broken people. We both have histories we can't change. But we chose each other. Despite the danger, despite the complications, despite every reason we shouldn't work. We chose each other. Alexander's eyes grew bright. Are you proposing to me, Maya Rodriguez? I'm proposing to you, Alexander Chen. Maya smiled, heart hammering. I'm proposing that we stop being two separate people trying to protect each other and start being a family. Legally. Officially. Forever. I don't have a ring. I don't need a ring. I need an answer. Alexander kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Yes. Yes, to everything. To forever. To family. To choosing each other every single day. The wedding was small, held in the garden with Sophia as maid of honor and Mrs. Park as officiant via online ordination. Diego from the restaurant came, still amazed that the exhausted waitress he'd known had become the wife of Alexander Chun. A few friends from Sophia's school, a couple of Alexander's business associates who'd made the transition to legitimate life. No family ghosts, no shadows from the past. Just the people who mattered, celebrating a love that had survived everything the world threw at it. Alexander's vows were simple. Maya Rodriguez Chun, you saved my life. Not just from the violence, from the emptiness. You and Sophia taught me that strength isn't about control, it's about connection. That family isn't a weakness to protect. It's a source of power I never knew existed. I promise to love you, protect you, and choose you every single day for the rest of my life. Maya cried through her own vows. Alexander Chun, when I was drowning, you gave me somewhere to go. Not just shelter, but home. You saw me when the world made me invisible. You gave Sophia a father and me a partner, and both of us a future we never dared dream. I promise to love you, to stand with you, to let you keep us safe while keeping you grounded. Let me spend the rest of my life returning the favor. Maya kissed him before the judge finished, breaking protocol, making everyone laugh again. The reception was quiet. Dinner, champagne, Sophia running around the garden with Mrs. Park's grandchildren, who'd been invited for the occasion. But as night fell and guests departed, Alexander found Maya on the garden bench where they'd first kissed. Chun, he said, sitting beside her. How does it feel? Surreal, perfect, terrifying. She leaned into him. Like everything good, I never thought I'd have. I never thought I'd have this either. A wife, a family, something worth protecting beyond power and territory. He tilted her face toward his. You've changed everything, Maya. You changed everything first. You saw a desperate woman and her daughter and offered salvation when no one else would. You gave us a life. and you gave me a reason to live it. Later that night, in his bedroom, their bedroom now, they made love for the first time, slow and careful, learning each other's bodies, mapping scars and soft places. When Alexander moved inside her, when Maya arched beneath him, it wasn't just physical. It was covenant promise forever. Afterwards, lying tangled together, Alexander traced patterns on her shoulder. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. The Lee family is finished, but there will be others. There will always be threats. I can't promise you a peaceful life, Maya. I can only promise to fight for you with everything I have. And I'm not naive enough to think danger is gone forever. But we're stronger together than apart. She turned to face him. We'll face whatever comes as a family. You, me, Sophia, that's our strength. What did I do to deserve you? You opened your heart when the world told you to stay closed. You chose love when violence would have been easier. You let us in. She kissed him. That's what you did. You chose us. A knock on the door interrupted them. Sophia's small voice. Mama, Alexander, can I come in? Alexander pulled on pants while Maya wrapped herself in his shirt. Come in, baby. Sophia shuffled in, clutching her favorite stuffed bear. I had a bad dream about the bad men. Maya's heart broke. Oh, sweetheart. Can I sleep with you guys, please? I'll be really quiet. Alexander answered before Maya could. Of course you can. Come here, Sophia. He lifted her into the bed, tucking her between them. Sophia sighed, immediately relaxing. Alexander, she asked sleepily. Yes. Can I call you Dad? Since you married Mama. Alexander went completely still. Maya saw tears well in his eyes. The first time she'd seen him actually cry. His voice broke. I would be honored, Sophia. So honored. Good night, Dad. Good night, daughter. Sophia fell asleep within minutes, safe between her parents. Maya reached across her daughter, taking Alexander's hand. Dad, she mouthed. He smiled, radiant despite the tears. Family, he mouthed back. They fell asleep like that. The next morning brought the first day of their new life. Alexander made pancakes, burning only half the batch. Sophia chattered about her friend's birthday party next weekend. Maya watched her family, her heart full to bursting, and thought about that rainy night when she'd stood outside a boarded-up motel with nowhere to go. She'd whispered her desperation into the storm, and a man with blood on his hands and loneliness in his heart had answered, You do now. 3 words that changed everything. 3 words that built her family. 3 words that proved love could bloom anywhere, even in the darkest places between the most unlikely people. But the story didn't end with the wedding. 6 months into married life, the pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines. Maya stared at it in the marble bathroom of their mansion, hands shaking. After Sophia, doctors had told her the chances were slim. Endometriosis, they'd said. Scar tissue. Maybe impossible. But here it was. Proof of another miracle. Alexander found her sitting on the bathroom floor, test in her trembling hands. Maya, what's wrong? She held up the test wordlessly. Alexander's face went through several emotions, shock, joy, terror, wonder, before settling on something that looked like reverence. Are you sure? 2 tests. Both positive. He sat beside her on the marble floor, pulled her into his arms. How do you feel about it? Terrified. Thrilled. Completely overwhelmed. You. The same. He kissed her temple. Sophia's going to be so excited. She's been asking for siblings since the wedding. Maya laughed, still a little hysterical. One problem though. What? I'm terrified I won't be a good mother to a baby. I barely kept Sophia alive those first years. You were 18, alone, and fighting for survival, Alexander said firmly. Now you're 26, married to a man who adores you, financially secure, and surrounded by people who love you. You're going to be an incredible mother. Again, they told Sophia that night over dinner. She literally fell off her chair in excitement. A baby. A real baby. Can I help take care of it? Will it be a boy or girl? When is it coming? Can I name it? How do babies get born? Do they come from the stork? Maya and Alexander exchanged glances over their daughter's rapid-fire questions. We don't know if it's a boy or girl yet, Maya said. The baby will be born in about 7 months. And no, you can't name it, but you can help pick the name. The pregnancy was different this time. No working 3 jobs, no sleeping in cars, no rationing medication. Instead, Alexander accompanied her to every doctor's appointment, holding her hand during ultrasounds, asking detailed questions about her health. Mrs. Park took over most of the household duties, fussing over Maya like a protective mother. Sophia appointed herself official baby guardian, reading to Maya's growing belly and singing lullabies she made up. At 20 weeks, they learned they were having twin boys. Alexander cried again, the second time she'd seen him lose control. 2 sons, he said in wonder. 2 little boys to teach and protect and love. I never thought. Maya lay on the examination table, watching her husband marvel at the ultrasound images of their children. What? I never thought I'd have any of this. Family. Legacy. Sons to carry forward something good instead of just surviving. These boys, he touched her belly gently. They'll never know what it's like to be hungry or scared or alone. They'll grow up knowing they're loved. The birth was complicated. 36 weeks. Early labor that wouldn't stop. Emergency section that left Maya weak and frightened. But the moment she heard their first cries, all the fear evaporated. 2 perfect boys, healthy despite their early arrival, with Alexander's dark eyes and Maya's stubborn chin. We need names, she said weakly, holding one son while Alexander held the other. What about Gabriel and Daniel? Strong names. Biblical. Hope and faith. Perfect. Alexander kissed her forehead. Gabriel Rodriguez Chun and Daniel Rodriguez Chun. Our sons. Sophia was beside herself with joy when they brought the twins home. She helped with bottles, sang them to sleep, appointed herself their protector and teacher. The house that had once been cold and empty now rang with baby cries and toddler laughter, with the sounds of a family growing and thriving. Alexander proved to be a devoted father, surprising himself with how naturally nurturing came to him. Maya would find him in the nursery at 3 a.m., holding both boys while they slept, just watching them breathe. You don't have to hold them all night, she said one evening, finding him there again. I know. He didn't look up from Gabriel's sleeping face. I just can't believe they're real. That they're mine. Ours. That I get to be their father. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly, leaving the old life behind, choosing this instead. Alexander looked at her then. This woman who'd given him everything worth having. Never. Not once. That life was about taking, controlling, surviving. This life is about giving, loving, thriving. He gestured to the nursery, to Sophia's artwork on the walls, to the toys scattered on expensive rugs. This is everything I never knew I wanted. Years passed, measured not in months, but in milestones. Sophia grew into a confident teenager, fluent in Korean and English, her art hanging in galleries, her laugh still filling the house with joy. She never forgot the hard times, but they shaped her into someone who understood both struggle and strength. The twin boys Gabriel and Daniel had Alexander's eyes and Maya's smile, chaos incarnate, but deeply loved. Alexander transitioned slowly out of the criminal underworld, using his power to legitimize his businesses, becoming, ironically, one of Chicago's most influential philanthropists. The man who'd once ruled through fear now channeled that strength into building community centers, funding schools, creating opportunities for people like Maya had been. The violence never completely disappeared. That would have been naive, but it touched them less as years passed. As Alexander's reputation shifted from dangerous to untouchable, on their 10th anniversary, Alexander took Maya back to Romano's Italian restaurant, the place where they'd first met. It was under new management now, but the corner booth remained. Do you remember? He asked, sliding into that same seat. I remember a man who saw past my exhaustion to my strength, who offered me salvation when I'd given up on miracles. Maya took his hand across the table. I remember falling in love before I even knew it was happening. I knew the moment I saw you. Something in me recognized something in you. Survivor calling to survivor. Fighter to fighter. He lifted her hand to his lips. You saved my life that day, Maya. Not just by accepting my offer, by reminding me I was human, and you saved mine. You gave us a home when we had nowhere to go. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment they were back in that first encounter. The exhausted single mother and the lonely crime lord. 2 people drowning in their separate ways. Now they were husband and wife, parents, partners, survivors who'd found more than shelter. They'd found love. You do now, Maya said softly, recalling that moment in the rain when she'd whispered her desperation and he'd offered his protection. I do, Alexander agreed. I always will. You and our children, my family, my purpose, my redemption, our redemption, Maya corrected. We saved each other, Alexander. Love saves us from ourselves. They ordered dinner. Simple pasta, nothing expensive, and talked about their children, their plans, their dreams, like normal people, like they weren't built from violence and desperation. Because in the end, that's what they'd become, normal, a family. And sometimes that was the greatest triumph of all. Back home, Sophia was watching her brothers, teaching them to draw, laughing at their childish jokes. When her parents walked in, she looked up and smiled. Good date. The best, Maya said, kissing her daughter's head. You guys are disgustingly in love, Sophia teased. Always have been, Alexander replied, pulling both his wife and daughter into a hug. Always will be. The twins tackled their father's legs, demanding attention, and chaos erupted. The good kind, the kind that meant life and laughter and love. Maya watched her family, her heart full to bursting, and thought about that rainy night when she'd stood outside a boarded-up motel with nowhere to go. She'd whispered her desperation into the storm, and a man with blood on his hands and loneliness in his heart had answered, "You do now." 3 words that changed everything. 3 words that built her family. 3 words that proved love could bloom anywhere, even in the darkest places between the most unlikely people. Maya Rodriguez Chun fell asleep that night, wrapped in her husband's arms, children breathing softly down the hall, grateful for every struggle that led her to this moment. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfection. They're about 2 broken people choosing to heal together, choosing to fight for each other, choosing every day to stay. And that choice repeated again and again across years and challenges became their forever. But life wasn't finished testing them. On a cold February morning, when the twins were 5 and Sophia was 17, the phone call came that changed everything. Alexander answered in his study, his voice immediately shifting to the cold, controlled tone Maya hadn't heard in years. When he emerged, his face was gray. "The Lees are back," he said simply. "I thought they were finished." The old generation was. This is their sons, grown up now, looking for revenge. They've spent 10 years planning this. Maya felt ice form in her stomach. What do they want? Everything I took from them. My businesses, my territory, my family. He ran hands through his hair. They know about you, about the kids. They've been watching us. For how long? Months. Maybe years. My security team is compromised. Some of my people have been feeding them information. The house isn't safe anymore. Again, Maya thought of Sophia's college applications, of the twins starting kindergarten next fall, of the life they'd built. How bad? Bad enough that we need to disappear. Tonight. But this time, we disappear together. No safe houses, no separation. We go dark, completely off the grid, until I can end this permanently. So they packed again, but this time they were prepared. Alexander had contingency plans, resources hidden away, identities that couldn't be traced. Mrs. Park went to stay with her family in Seoul. The mansion was locked up, security systems activated, but Maya knew they might never see it again. The safe house this time was a cabin in Montana, isolated but comfortable. No neighbors for miles, but modern communications, security, everything they needed. Sophia took it better than expected, treating it like an adventure. The twins were young enough to adapt quickly. Maya was the one who struggled, watching her family's life compressed back into suitcases, their stability once again threatened by shadows from Alexander's past. For 6 months, they lived in hiding. Alexander worked remotely, using encrypted communications to dismantle the new Lee operation piece by piece. It was a different kind of war this time, fought with lawyers and federal agents instead of guns and territory. Civilized, but no less deadly. Maya homeschooled the twins, helped Sophia prepare for early college admission through online programs, tried to maintain normalcy in an abnormal situation. But at night, she lay in Alexander's arms and felt the old fears creeping back. What if this never ended? What if their children grew up always looking over their shoulders? What if love wasn't enough after all? The resolution came suddenly. Alexander's phone rang at dawn, and he answered with the sharp alertness of someone who'd been expecting important news. When he hung up, he turned to Maya with something she hadn't seen in months. Real relief. It's over. Really over this time. The Lee brothers, their entire organization, arrested simultaneously in 6 cities. RICO charges, money laundering, human trafficking. They're going away forever. Maya stared at him. You're sure? There's no one left who'll come after us. No one left who knows enough to try. Alexander pulled her close. We're free, Maya. Really free this time. We can go home. The mansion felt different when they returned. Lighter. Like even the building itself knew the darkness had finally lifted. Sophia threw herself back into her senior year, determined to graduate with her class despite the interruption. The twins rediscovered their toys, their rooms, their normal routines. Alexander threw himself into legitimate business with renewed energy, knowing he'd never have to look over his shoulder again. But the real healing came slowly. Family dinners where no one jumped at unexpected sounds. Sophia's friends coming to the house without background checks. The twins playing in the garden without armed guards watching from the shadows. Maya waking up without checking the security monitors before getting coffee. Normal life. The life they'd fought so hard to build and protect. On a warm afternoon in late spring, Maya found Alexander in the garden where they'd had their first real conversation as free people. Sophia was graduating next month with early admission to Stanford. The twins were healthy and happy and completely unaware of the danger that had once surrounded them. I have something to tell you, Maya said, settling beside him on the familiar bench. Alexander looked up from his book, smiled that easy smile he'd developed in the years since leaving the criminal world behind. Let me guess, you're pregnant again. Maya's mouth fell open. How did you? You've been tired, emotional, avoiding coffee. Same signs as before. Plus, you get this particular glow when you're creating life. His smile widened. I've been waiting for you to figure it out. I wasn't sure, she said weakly. I'm older now. The twins were complicated. I thought maybe nothing. Alexander set aside his book, pulled her close. Are you happy about it? Are you? Terrified, thrilled, wondering how we'll manage another child when Sophie is leaving for college and the twins are already a handful. But yes, incredibly happy. One more chance to do this right. To raise a child in complete peace and safety. Maya leaned into his warmth, watching their sons play on the swing set Alexander had installed. One more chance to prove that love really could overcome anything. That families built on choice and commitment and daily decisions to stay could weather any storm. This time, the pregnancy was pure joy. No threats, no hiding, no fear. Just anticipation and preparation and excitement. Sophia was beside herself with glee at becoming a big sister again, already planning how she'd visit from college to help with the baby. The twins, now old enough to understand, appointed themselves protectors of Mama and the baby, bringing her pillows and snacks and singing lullabies to her growing belly. Alexander was even more attentive than before, if possible. He'd survived 2 wars for his family's safety and emerged victorious. This child would be born into absolute security, absolute love, absolute freedom. The daughter, because it was a daughter this time, arrived on a perfect October morning, after an easy labor that left Maya feeling strong and elated. Isabella Rodriguez Chon, named for Maya's great-grandmother, the matriarch who'd come to America with nothing but determination and hope. She was beautiful, healthy, and completely peaceful, as if she knew she'd been born into a world that wanted nothing more than to love and protect her. Alexander cried when he held her for the first time, the third time Maya had seen him lose composure. Our daughter, he said in wonder. The baby who gets to grow up completely safe, completely loved. The baby who will never know what it's like to be afraid or hungry or alone. Maya watched her husband hold their daughter, surrounded by their other children, in the home they'd built together, and felt something she'd never dared feel before. Complete and utter contentment. The future stretched ahead, bright and full of possibility. Sophia's college graduation, the twins growing up, Isabella taking her first steps in a house full of laughter and security. Alexander's businesses thriving, built on legitimate success and honest work. Maybe grandchildren someday, born into a family legacy of love and strength, and choosing each other every single day. That night, with Isabella sleeping peacefully in her bassinet and their other children safe in their beds, Maya and Alexander stood once again on their bedroom balcony, watching the city lights. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Choosing this life, choosing me. Not once. Maya smiled, remembering asking him the same question years ago. You. Every day, I wake up terrified I'll lose you. Lose this. But I've never regretted it. You're the best decision I ever made. We're the best decision we ever made. Maya corrected. This isn't you saving me or me saving you. It's us choosing each other. Every single day. He pulled her close, and they stood there wrapped in each other until the stars came out. Somewhere in the city, other families were struggling, other mothers were working multiple jobs, other children were falling asleep hungry. But in that moment, in that house, a family forged in crisis, strengthened by love, bound by choice, stood together against the darkness. And the darkness, for once, retreated completely. Because some things are stronger than fear, stronger than violence, stronger than the weight of the world. Love, family, the fierce determination of people who refuse to let their pasts define their futures. That's what Alexander Chun and Maya Rodriguez built together. Not an empire, a home. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Years passed, measured not in months, but in milestones. Sophia became a successful architect, designing affordable housing projects that helped families like her mother had been. She married a good man who understood her fierce loyalty to her family, who never questioned why her stepfather's business associates sometimes looked like they could kill someone with their bare hands. The twins, Gabriel and Daniel, grew into strong, confident young men who knew they were loved unconditionally, but also understood the value of hard work and helping others. One became a doctor, one became a teacher, both carrying forward their parents' legacy of building instead of destroying. Isabella, the baby born in peace, grew up to be exactly what her parents had hoped. Strong, kind, completely secure in her place in the world. She never knew that her father had once been feared throughout Chicago's underworld. To her, he was simply Dad, the man who read her bedtime stories and taught her to defend herself, and showed up to every school event with flowers and pride written all over his face. Alexander and Maya aged together, their love deepening with each challenge overcome, each milestone celebrated, each ordinary day of choosing each other. The mansion in Lincoln Park became a haven not just for their family, but for others. Former addicts Alexander helped get clean, single mothers Maya mentored, children who needed a safe place when their own homes weren't safe. They built a legacy that had nothing to do with territory or fear, and everything to do with love multiplying itself. On their 20th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren and friends who'd become family, Maya looked at her husband across the garden where they'd first kissed and marveled at the journey. From a desperate woman with nowhere to go to the matriarch of a family built on love and choice and daily commitment to something bigger than themselves. Alexander caught her looking and raised his champagne glass in a private toast. To second chances, he said quietly. To love that transforms everything it touches. To never having to say goodbye to the people who matter most. Maya raised her own glass, tears blurring her vision. To the man who heard a whisper in the rain and answered with forever. To the family we built one choice at a time. To proving that sometimes fairy tales are real, they just don't look like what we expected. They touched glasses, kissed to the cheers of their family, and danced on the grass where Sophia had once done cartwheels and the twins had learned to walk, and Isabella had taken her first steps. Around them, the people they loved most celebrated a love story that had survived everything the world could throw at it, and emerged stronger, deeper, more beautiful than either of them had ever dared to dream. And somewhere in the city, on streets where Maya had once walked exhausted and afraid, other desperate people whispered their own prayers into the night, hoping for someone to answer. You do now. What did you think of Maya and Alexander's story? Could you feel the chemistry between them? Did the wedding scene give you chills? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you love this story of a crime boss falling for the woman who saw past his dangerous reputation, smash that like button and subscribe for more intense romance stories every week. Which moment was your favorite? When Alexander offered Maya the job to save her and Sophia, the first night they held each other, their wedding in the garden, or watching their family grow and thrive despite every challenge? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories of unexpected love, second chances, or families built on choice rather than blood, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Remember, true love doesn't care about social status, background, or past mistakes. It sees the heart beneath everything else, and chooses to build something beautiful together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. 5 years had passed since Isabella's birth, and the Chun family had settled into a rhythm of contentment that Alexander still sometimes couldn't quite believe was real. The mansion in Lincoln Park had become more than a home. It was a sanctuary where love multiplied itself daily in countless small moments. Sophia had graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with her architecture degree and was now working for a firm that specialized in sustainable, affordable housing. Her first major project, a community center in the neighborhood where Maya had once worked 3 jobs, was set to break ground next month. She'd insisted on incorporating a childcare facility, remembering all too well what it was like to be a child whose mother had nowhere safe to leave her. Gabriel and Daniel, now 10 years old, were thriving in their private school but remained grounded by their parents' insistence on understanding the value of hard work. They volunteered at the community kitchen Alexander funded every Saturday, serving meals to families who reminded Maya painfully of who she'd once been. The boys had inherited their father's quiet intensity and their mother's fierce compassion, a combination that promised to change the world in ways Alexander's younger self could never have imagined. Isabella, now 5, was the light of everyone's life. She possessed Sophia's artistic talent, the twins' mischievous energy, and an innate confidence that came from never doubting she was loved and safe. She called Alexander Poppy and Maya Mommy, spoke 3 languages fluently thanks to Mrs. Park's patient tutoring, and had already informed her parents that she intended to be a doctor like Uncle Gabriel was planning to be when she grew up. The transformation of Alexander's business empire continued to amaze everyone who'd known him in the old days. Chin Security Solutions had become one of the most respected consulting firms in the Midwest, specializing in helping other former criminals transition to legitimate life. Alexander had discovered that his skills at reading people, understanding threats, and building loyalty were just as valuable in the legal world as they'd been in the underworld. The irony wasn't lost on him that he now made more money helping people escape dangerous situations than he'd ever made creating them. Maya had found her own calling in managing the Chun Family Foundation, which focused on supporting single mothers and their children. She'd completed her GED, then her bachelor's degree in social work, studying late into the night while Alexander helped with homework and put children to bed. The foundation provided emergency housing, job training, childcare, and most importantly, hope to women who'd found themselves where Maya had once been. Every woman they helped was a victory against the desperation Maya remembered all too well. But success, they'd learned, brought its own challenges. Alexander's wealth and influence made him a target for a different kind of threat, people who wanted to exploit his success rather than destroy it. Corrupt politicians seeking donations for silence. Desperate criminals hoping to convince him to return to his old life. Business rivals who resented his transformation and the respect it had earned him. On a crisp October morning, as Maya was preparing Isabella's lunch for kindergarten and mediating an argument between the twins about whose turn it was to feed their pet rabbit, Alexander emerged from his study with the expression she'd learned to recognize as trouble brewing. The phone call had been brief, but his knuckles were white where they gripped his coffee mug, and the muscle in his jaw was twitching the way it did when he was calculating threats and responses. "What is it?" Maya asked, automatically stepping closer. Over the years, she'd learned to read his moods as clearly as he read potential dangers. The children, sensing the shift in atmosphere, quieted their bickering and looked toward their parents with the instinctive awareness of children who'd grown up in a household where vigilance was never fully relaxed. "Corporate espionage," Alexander said quietly. "Someone's been systematically stealing client information from my firm. Not just financial data, but personal details about people trying to escape dangerous situations. Family members' locations, new identities, safe house addresses. If this information gets into the wrong hands, people will die." Maya felt ice form in her stomach. "How long has this been happening?" "Months, possibly longer. My IT team discovered unusual access patterns in our secure files. But whoever's doing this is sophisticated. They've covered their tracks well." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd seen countless times when he was working through a complex problem. "But Maya, some of the compromised files contain information about us. Our children's schools, our daily routines, security protocols for the house. If someone's planning to use this information against us, the implication hung heavy between them. After years of peace, the shadow of danger was falling across their family again. But this time was different. This wasn't about Alexander's criminal past catching up with them. This was about his legitimate success, making them targets for an entirely new kind of threat. Isabella tugged at Maya's sleeve. "Mommy, why does Poppy look worried? Are the bad men coming back?" Out of the mouths of babes. Alexander had been careful to shield their youngest from the details of his former life, but Isabella was perceptive enough to sense when her parents were concerned about safety. The twins, old enough to remember the months they'd spent in hiding, were watching their father with expressions that mixed trust with wariness. "No, mi amor," Maya said, lifting Isabella into her arms. "There are no bad men. Poppy's just dealing with some work problems. Nothing for you to worry about." But she met Alexander's eyes over their daughter's head, and the communication that passed between them was clear. They needed to talk, privately, and soon. Whatever was happening, they would face it together, as they'd faced everything else. But first, they needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. After the children left for school and preschool, accompanied by the discreet security team that had become a permanent but invisible part of their lives, Maya and Alexander sat in his study while he explained the full scope of the problem. The stolen information wasn't just about Chin Security Solutions clients, though that was serious enough. Someone had also accessed files related to the Foundation's beneficiaries, women and children in vulnerable situations who depended on confidentiality for their safety. "We're not just talking about corporate theft," Alexander said grimly. "We're talking about information that could get domestic violence survivors killed if it reaches their abusers, could expose relocated families to the criminals they're hiding from, could destroy the lives of people who trusted us to protect them." Maya studied her husband's face, seeing the weight of responsibility he carried for every person under his protection. This was why she loved him, not just for how he protected their own family, but for how he'd extended that fierce protectiveness to anyone who needed it. "Do we know who's behind it?" "That's what I'm working to find out." Alexander pulled up several files on his computer, showing her patterns of access that meant nothing to her untrained eye, but clearly told a story to his experienced mind. The sophistication suggests either corporate competitors trying to steal our client base, or someone with connections to law enforcement or intelligence agencies. The access patterns are too clean, too careful to be ordinary hackers. Maya leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. If it's someone with official connections, that means they could have resources we can't match. Government databases, surveillance capabilities, the power to make our lives very difficult even if we do everything legally. Alexander nodded grimly. "Which is why we need to be very careful about how we handle this. One wrong move, and we could find ourselves under investigation for things we didn't do, our children's safety compromised, our foundation destroyed along with all the people it helps." The conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Park's gentle knock on the study door. "Mr. Alexander, Mrs. Maya," she said in her careful English. "There are two gentlemen here to see you. They say they're from the FBI." Maya felt her blood turn to ice. FBI visits were never routine, especially not when they came to the home instead of the office. Alexander's expression didn't change, but she saw his hands clench slightly, the automatic response of someone who'd spent years viewing law enforcement as the enemy, even though those days were long behind him. "Show them to the living room," Alexander said calmly. "We'll be right there." Mrs. Park nodded and withdrew, leaving Maya and Alexander to exchange a look that communicated years of shared understanding. Whatever this was about, they would face it together, presenting a united front while protecting their family's interests. The two FBI agents were exactly what Maya had expected, middle-aged men in conservative suits with expressions that gave nothing away. They introduced themselves as Special Agent Morrison and Special Agent Chun, which prompted a brief moment of surprised recognition when Alexander realized they shared a surname. "No relation," Agent Chun said with a slight smile. "But I understand the irony." They declined offers of coffee or water, getting straight to business. "Mr. Chun," Agent Morrison said, "we're investigating a series of data breaches targeting security consulting firms across the Midwest. Your company is one of several that have been compromised, but given the sensitive nature of your client base, we wanted to speak with you personally about the implications." Alexander leaned forward slightly, His full attention focused on the agents. What specifically are you looking for? Information about the perpetrators, their methods, their possible motivations. Agent Chen consulted his notes. We believe this is part of a larger operation, possibly state-sponsored, targeting individuals and organizations involved in witness protection, refugee resettlement, and criminal rehabilitation programs. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Those were exactly the areas where Alexander's legitimate businesses and their foundation work intersected. If foreign agents or criminal organizations were targeting that information, the potential for harm was enormous. How can we help? She asked, speaking for the first time since the agents arrived. Agent Morrison's expression softened slightly when he looked at her. Mrs. Chun, we understand this puts your family in a potentially vulnerable position. Mr. Chin's background is well documented, and while his cooperation with federal authorities in the past has been exemplary, it also makes him a high-value target for people who might want to pressure him back into criminal activity. Alexander's voice was carefully controlled when he responded. My criminal career ended over 15 years ago. I've been fully cooperative with every federal investigation, provided intelligence that led to the prosecution of dozens of criminals, and built a legitimate business that employs over 200 people. What exactly are you suggesting? Agent Chun held up a hand in a peacekeeping gesture. We're not suggesting anything, Mr. Chun. We're trying to protect you and your family, along with your clients and foundation beneficiaries. But we need your help to do it effectively. Someone with significant resources is targeting the infrastructure you've built to help people escape dangerous situations. We need to work together to stop them before people get hurt. The next few hours were spent in detailed discussion about security protocols, information sharing, and protective measures. The agents were thorough but respectful, clearly aware that Alexander's cooperation was voluntary and valuable. They'd done their homework, understanding not just his criminal background, but also his legitimate transformation and the good work he'd accomplished since leaving the underworld behind. When the agents finally left, Maya and Alexander sat in their living room, processing the conversation and its implications. The house felt different somehow, as if the visit had changed the very air they breathed. Outside, they could hear the sounds of normal suburban life, children playing, dogs barking, lawnmowers humming. But inside, they were once again calculating risks and making contingency plans. I thought those days were behind us, Maya said quietly. The days of worrying about federal investigations and dangerous enemies. I thought we'd built something completely separate from all that. Alexander reached for her hand, threading their fingers together the way he had countless times over the years. We did build something separate. But success brings its own challenges, its own targets. The good we're doing, the people we're helping, that makes us valuable to people who want to exploit or destroy that work. Maya squeezed his hand, drawing strength from the contact. So what do? Do we scale back the foundation work? Increase security? Move the children to a safer location? None of that, Alexander said firmly. We don't let fear dictate our lives again. We take reasonable precautions. We cooperate with the investigation, but we don't stop doing good work because someone wants to use it against us. The people we help need us to be stronger than our fear. It was the right answer, the answer Maya had hoped to hear, but it still left her feeling unsettled. That night, after tucking Isabella into bed and making sure the twins had finished their homework, she found Alexander on the bedroom balcony where they'd shared so many important conversations over the years. He was staring out at the city lights, but she could tell his mind was racing through possibilities and contingencies. What aren't you telling me? She asked, moving to stand beside him. There was something in his expression during the FBI visit, something beyond normal concern about the data breach. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old secrets reluctantly revealed. The timing, he said finally. This data breach, the FBI investigation, it's all happening just as I've been working on something that could be very significant for our foundation work. Maya turned to face him fully. What kind of something? I've been in negotiations with several major corporations and a coalition of city governments about a comprehensive program for criminal rehabilitation and community reintegration. Not just individual cases, but systemic change, job training, housing assistance, family reunification, The whole infrastructure needed to help people build legitimate lives after prison or criminal involvement. It sounded exactly like the kind of work Alexander had been building toward for years, the natural evolution of everything they'd learned about helping people escape dangerous situations. But there was something in his tone that suggested complications. "That sounds amazing," Maya said carefully. "What's the problem?" "The problem is that a program like this would affect thousands of people, millions of dollars in government and private funding, and would significantly disrupt several very profitable industries. Private prisons, predatory lending companies that target former criminals, the whole ecosystem that profits from recidivism and continued criminal involvement." Alexander's expression was grim. "If someone wanted to stop this program from moving forward, compromising our data and our clients would be a very effective way to discredit us." Maya felt understanding dawn like a cold sunrise. "You think the data breach isn't random corporate espionage. You think it's specifically designed to destroy your credibility before this rehabilitation program can be announced." "It would make sense," Alexander said. "Steal information about our clients. Use it to create safety breaches or publicize confidential details. Then claim we can't be trusted with sensitive information. Destroy our reputation right when we're positioned to do the most good." The next few weeks were a careful balancing act between normal family life and the growing investigation. Alexander worked closely with the FBI, sharing information about his business systems and client protection protocols while trying to maintain the confidentiality that was essential to his work. Maya coordinated with the Foundation's security team to protect their beneficiaries while continuing to provide services to women and children who desperately needed help. The children sensed something was different, but their parents worked hard to maintain routine and normalcy. Sophia, now living in her own apartment near her architecture firm, was kept informed about the general situation but shielded from the specific details. The twins continued their normal activities, school and sports and friends, with the discreet protection of security personnel who'd become so familiar they were practically family members. Isabella, blissfully unaware of adult concerns, continued to charm everyone around her with her infectious enthusiasm for life. The breakthrough came 3 weeks into the investigation, when Alexander's IT team discovered a pattern in the data access that pointed to a specific individual. Marcus Webb, a former employee who'd been fired 6 months earlier for attempting to access client files without authorization. Webb had worked for Chun Security Solutions for 2 years, had excellent technical skills, and had expressed resentment about Alexander's transformation from criminal to legitimate businessman. "I never trusted that guy," Alexander told Maya as they reviewed the evidence with Agent Morrison. "Something about the way he talked about my background, like he was disappointed I'd gone legitimate. Like he thought I owed it to him to stay criminal so he could profit from association with me. But I had no proof, just instinct. Sometimes instinct was enough." Agent Morrison studied the data patterns that clearly showed Webb's digital fingerprints throughout the security breach. "We've got enough evidence to arrest him, but we'd like to let him run a little longer, see if he leads us to whoever's paying him. Someone with his skill set doesn't usually work alone on something this sophisticated." The surveillance operation revealed that Webb was indeed working with a larger group, a consortium of private prison executives and predatory lending companies who stood to lose significant profits if Alexander's rehabilitation program succeeded. They'd hired Webb not just to steal information, but to create a scandal that would destroy Alexander's credibility and derail the program before it could be announced. The plan was insidious in its simplicity. Use the stolen client information to track down reformed criminals who'd rebuilt their lives with Chun Security Solutions' help, then expose their new identities and locations to vengeful former associates or victims' families. The resulting violence and chaos would be blamed on Alexander's inadequate security, destroying his reputation and proving that reformed criminals couldn't be trusted with sensitive information. "It's not just about money," Agent Chun explained to Maya and Alexander as they coordinated the final phase of the investigation. "It's about maintaining a system where criminal rehabilitation fails, where people have no choice but to return to crime or accept exploitation. Your success threatens that system, proves that genuine reform is possible with the right support." The arrest operation was carefully coordinated to minimize risk to Alexander's clients and Foundation beneficiaries. Webb and his conspirators were taken into custody simultaneously across 3 states. Their communications networks shut down, their stolen data secured. But the victory felt hollow when Maya and Alexander realized how close they'd come to disaster. How many innocent people would have been hurt if the plan had succeeded? That night, as they sat in their study reviewing the final reports from the FBI, Maya found herself thinking about the cost of doing good in a world where some people profited from others' suffering. "We're going to continue the rehabilitation program, aren't we?" she said. It wasn't really a question. Despite everything that had happened, she knew her husband well enough to know he wouldn't be deterred by threats or setbacks. "Of course we are," Alexander replied. "In fact, we're going to accelerate it. The attempt to stop us proves how necessary this work is. How many people are counting on us to succeed?" He turned to face her, and Maya saw in his eyes the same fierce determination that had helped him build a criminal empire, then destroy it in favor of something better. "Maya, we've been given a chance to help thousands of people build legitimate lives. We can't let fear or greed or other people's narrow interests stop us from doing what we know is right." The formal announcement of the Comprehensive Criminal Rehabilitation Initiative came 2 months later at a press conference attended by mayors from 6 cities, executives from dozen corporations, and representatives from numerous nonprofit organizations. Alexander stood at the podium, no longer the dangerous young man who'd once ruled through fear and violence, but a respected businessman whose transformation had inspired others to believe that change was possible. The program will provide job training, housing assistance, family reunification services, and long-term support to help former criminals build legitimate, productive lives, Alexander announced to the assembled crowd. "We're not just talking about reducing recidivism. We're talking about transforming communities, breaking cycles of poverty and violence that have persisted for generations." Maya watched from the audience, surrounded by their children and Mrs. Park, as her husband outlined a vision for systemic change that would affect thousands of families. Sophia had designed the housing components, incorporating her passion for affordable architecture with her family's commitment to second chances. The twins, now old enough to understand the significance of their father's work, sat with obvious pride as he described programs that would help other children avoid the struggles they'd never had to face. Isabella, secure in her father's lap during the more formal portions of the announcement, charmed reporters with her confident answers to questions about her family's work. When one journalist asked if she was proud of her father, Isabella's response made headlines. "Poppy helps people who made mistakes become good again, just like he did. Everyone deserves to be good if they want to." The program's launch was a resounding success, exceeding enrollment expectations and attracting additional funding from sources Alexander had never anticipated. Former clients of Chun Security Solutions became counselors and mentors for new participants. Women who'd been helped by the foundation volunteered to support newly released female prisoners trying to rebuild relationships with their children. The community that Alexander and Maya had built around their own family expanded to encompass hundreds of other families seeking transformation and hope. But success brought new challenges. Media attention meant public scrutiny of Alexander's background and transformation. Political opponents of criminal justice reform used his past to attack the program, arguing that former criminals couldn't be trusted to help current ones. Death threats arrived regularly, from victims' family members who believed reformed criminals didn't deserve second chances, from current criminals who viewed his legitimate success as betrayal. The threats forced another round of security upgrades and protocol changes. The children's schools were briefed on potential risks. Sophia's apartment building installed additional cameras and security measures. Mrs. Park, now in her 70s but still fiercely protective of the family she'd helped raise, insisted on taking a personal safety course despite Alexander's assurances that she was already better protected than most world leaders. One particular threat stood out from the routine hate mail and angry phone calls. A letter arrived at the foundation office, postmarked from a federal prison, containing detailed information about Maya's daily routines and the children's activities. The letter's author identified himself as Ricardo Santos, a former associate of Alexander's from his criminal days, now serving a life sentence for murder and racketeering. "You think you can just walk away from what you were," the letter read in part. "Build your nice life with your pretty wife and your clean money. But I remember who you really are, Alexander. I remember the things you did, the people you hurt. Maybe it's time your family learned those stories too. The threat was specific enough to be taken seriously, vague enough to be difficult to prosecute. Santos had connections throughout the prison system and criminal underworld, people who owed him favors or feared his reach even from behind bars. More troubling was his knowledge of details about Maya and the children's lives that suggested he had sources of information beyond what was publicly available. Alexander's response was swift and decisive. He immediately contacted Agent Morrison, sharing the threat and requesting federal investigation into how Santos had obtained such detailed information about the family. He also activated the highest level of security protocols, essentially putting the family under discreet but comprehensive protection. But the most difficult conversation was with Maya, explaining the specific nature of Santos' threat and what it meant for their family's safety. They sat in their bedroom late at night, after ensuring the children were asleep and the house was secure, and Alexander told his wife about the man who'd once been his closest associate in the criminal underworld. Santos was my partner for almost 5 years, Alexander said quietly. We built the organization together, shared profits and risks, and trusted each other with our lives. When I decided to go legitimate, he felt betrayed. He believed I owed him loyalty above everything else, including my own family's safety. When I cooperated with federal authorities to bring down the organization, Santos took it as personal betrayal. Maya listened without judgment, understanding that these were pieces of Alexander's past he'd hoped never to revisit. What did he mean about stories your family should learn? She asked. What kind of things did you do that he could tell us about? Alexander was quiet for a long time, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old guilt he'd thought he'd finally outgrown. I wasn't just a businessman who happened to work outside the law, Maya. I did things, ordered things, that resulted in people being hurt, sometimes killed. I tell myself it was necessary for survival, for protecting my territory and my people. But the truth is I made choices that Santos could use to destroy everything I've built with you and the children. Maya reached for his hand, offering the same unconditional support she'd given him from the beginning of their relationship. Alexander, I know who you were. I've always known. You've never hidden your past from me, and I chose to love you anyway. Whatever Santos thinks he can tell me about your old life, it won't change how I feel about the man you became or the father you are to our children. But we need to figure out how to protect them from this kind of knowledge until they're old enough to understand it properly. The security assessment revealed that Santos had indeed been receiving information from outside sources, a network of former criminals and corrupt prison employees who shared his resentment of Alexander's legitimate success. The FBI investigation uncovered a more extensive threat than anyone had initially realized, a coordinated effort to gather information about Alexander's family that went far beyond simple revenge or intimidation. It's about money, Agent Morrison explained during a briefing at the federal building. Santos has been working with several criminal organizations that have been disrupted by your rehabilitation program. Former associates who've gone legitimate, reduced drug trafficking in certain neighborhoods, decreased recruitment for criminal enterprises. Your success is costing them money, so they're trying to force you back into the old life or destroy you completely. The solution required more than just increased security. It required a comprehensive strategy to neutralize the threat while maintaining the family's safety and the program's effectiveness. Alexander worked with federal authorities to design a plan that would address both the immediate danger from Santos and the longer-term threat from criminal organizations opposed to the rehabilitation initiative. The plan was complex and risky, requiring Alexander to essentially go undercover within the prison system to gather evidence about Santos' network while wearing recording devices and coordination with federal agents. It meant weeks of preparation, extensive safety protocols, and the constant possibility that something could go wrong and Alexander might not come home. Maya struggled with the decision, understanding the necessity but terrified of the risks. They'd built a life where Alexander's criminal skills were channeled into legitimate purposes, where his ability to understand and navigate dangerous situations was used to help people rather than exploit them. But this plan would require him to essentially become his old self again, at least temporarily, to infiltrate and expose threats that conventional law enforcement couldn't reach. I can't ask you to be comfortable with this, Alexander said as they discussed the plan for the dozenth time. I can't even promise you I'll come back the same man who goes in. Being around that world again, playing that role, it changes something inside you even when you're doing it for the right reasons. But Maya, if we don't stop this now, if we let Santos and his network continue to gather information and coordinate threats, our children will never be safe. The program will fail, and thousands of people who could have been helped will remain trapped in cycles of crime and violence. Maya understood the choice they were facing. It was the same choice they'd faced repeatedly throughout their relationship, whether to retreat from doing good because it involved risk, or to move forward with courage because the good was worth the danger. In the end, the decision was easier than she'd expected. Alexander, she said firmly, you've spent 15 years proving that people can change, that redemption is possible, that love and family and commitment to something bigger than yourself can transform even the most dangerous person into someone who builds instead of destroys. I trust that transformation. I trust you. And I trust that whatever you have to do to protect our family and help other families, you'll come back to us. The operation took 6 months to plan and 3 weeks to execute. Alexander, working under federal protection and supervision, managed to penetrate Santos' network and gather evidence about a conspiracy that extended far beyond simple revenge. The recordings he obtained revealed plans to assassinate several federal judges involved in criminal justice reform, to bomb community centers serving former prisoners, and to kidnap family members of other reformed criminals who'd cooperated with authorities. Santos himself was placed in solitary confinement pending additional federal charges that would ensure he never again had the ability to coordinate threats from prison. His network was systematically dismantled, with dozens of arrests across multiple states and several countries. The evidence Alexander helped gather also led to major reforms in prison communication systems, making it much more difficult for incarcerated criminals to coordinate outside activities. But the personal cost was significant. Alexander returned from the operation changed in subtle but important ways. He was more vigilant, more suspicious of strangers, quicker to assess potential threats in everyday situations. He'd had to access parts of his personality that he'd worked for years to leave behind, and those old instincts didn't simply disappear when the mission was over. Maya noticed the changes immediately. The way he positioned himself in restaurants to watch all the entrances. The way he checked locks and security systems multiple times each night. The way he struggled to fully relax even in the safety of their own home. It was like watching him fight an internal war between the man he'd become and the man he'd had to pretend to be. The children noticed too, in the way children always do. Isabella started having nightmares about bad men again, picking up on tension she couldn't understand but could definitely feel. The twins became more protective of their younger sister, more aware of their father's moods, more careful about discussing school friends or activities that might involve new people. Sophia, old enough to understand more of the situation, made a point of visiting more often, helping to maintain family normalcy through her calm presence and unwavering support. Recovery was a family effort. Mrs. Park, who'd watched Alexander transform from dangerous criminal to devoted father, understood what he was struggling with and quietly provided the same steady, accepting presence she'd offered years earlier. Maya made space for his vigilance while gently encouraging him to trust the safety they'd built together. The children offered unconditional love and the simple demands of daily family life that gradually pulled Alexander back toward the present instead of the dangerous past he'd had to revisit. The rehabilitation program continued to thrive, now with federal backing and expanded funding that allowed it to help even more people. Alexander's testimony about Santos Network had provided valuable intelligence about how criminal organizations adapted to law enforcement efforts, leading to more effective strategies for disrupting criminal enterprises. The Foundation's work expanded to include programs specifically designed to help law enforcement families deal with the stress and trauma of dangerous operations. On a quiet Sunday morning, 6 months after the completion of the Santos operation, Maya found Alexander in Isabella's room, watching their daughter sleep. He'd been doing this more often lately, checking on all the children multiple times each night, as if reassuring himself that they were safe and real and still his to protect. "She's growing up so fast," he said quietly when he noticed Maya in the doorway. Yesterday, she was a baby who'd never known fear or hunger or uncertainty. Now she's asking questions about why some people don't have homes, why some children don't live with their parents, why the world isn't always fair. I want to protect her innocence, but I also want her to understand how fortunate she is. Maya moved to stand beside him, both of them watching their sleeping daughter. She's growing up exactly the way she should, Maya said softly. Safe and loved and aware that her family works to help other people. She may never experience the kind of fear we knew, but she'll understand the value of compassion and service and using her advantages to help others. That's the best kind of innocence to lose. Alexander nodded, finally seeming to find peace with the balance between protection and preparation that defined their parenting. In the months following the Santos operation, he'd struggled with how much their children should know about the dangerous world that still existed beyond their safe home. But watching Isabella's natural empathy for others, seeing the twins' commitment to volunteer work, observing Sophia's dedication to affordable housing projects, he'd realized that their children were already developing the kind of strength and compassion that would serve them well in an imperfect world. The family story had become part of the rehabilitation program's success narrative, proof that transformation was possible not just for individuals, but for entire families and communities. Alexander spoke regularly at conferences and policy meetings, sharing insights about how former criminals could become effective advocates for reform and rehabilitation. Maya testified before congressional committees about the importance of supporting families during the reintegration process, emphasizing how stability and love could accelerate positive change. But their greatest satisfaction came from the daily work of helping individual families navigate challenges they understood intimately. Every woman who found housing through the foundation was someone's mother trying to provide stability for her children. Every former prisoner who found employment through the program was someone's father trying to rebuild relationships damaged by years of poor choices. Every child who benefited from the expanded community services was someone's precious son or daughter deserving of every opportunity to thrive. 5 years after the Santos threat had been neutralized, the Chun family had settled into a new rhythm of purposeful contentment. Alexander's transformation was complete not just personally but professionally. His reputation as a reformed criminal who'd become an effective advocate for justice reform recognized nationally. Maya had completed her master's degree in social work and was being courted by several universities to develop criminal justice programs that integrated family support services. Sophia had established her own architecture firm, specializing in housing developments that incorporated comprehensive social services. Her designs were being implemented in cities across the country, creating communities where former prisoners and their families could rebuild their lives with dignity and support. She'd also gotten engaged to Marcus, a social worker she'd met through the foundation, who understood both her family's unique history and their commitment to service. Gabriel and Daniel, now 15, were both honor students with clear career goals inspired by their family's work. Gabriel planned to study medicine with a focus on addiction treatment and trauma recovery. Daniel was interested in law school, hoping to work on criminal justice reform from within the legal system. Both boys volunteered regularly at community centers and understood that their privileged lives came with responsibilities to help others less fortunate. Isabella, now 10, was developing into exactly the kind of confident, compassionate young person Maya and Alexander had hoped to raise. She spoke fluent Spanish, Korean, and English, played piano and soccer with equal enthusiasm, and had informed her parents that she intended to be a doctor who helped children whose parents were in prison. Her matter-of-fact acceptance of her family's work and her determination to contribute to it represented everything Alexander had hoped his transformation could accomplish. The 10th anniversary of the rehabilitation program's launch was marked by a celebration that brought together hundreds of families whose lives had been transformed by the services and support it provided. Former prisoners who'd become business owners, teachers, and community leaders. Women who'd escaped abusive relationships and built new lives for themselves and their children. Young people who'd avoided criminal involvement because they had access to education, job training, and mentoring that previous generations had lacked. Alexander stood before the assembled crowd, No longer the uncertain young man who'd offered Maya a job to save her from desperation, but a seasoned advocate who'd learned to channel his natural leadership abilities toward building rather than destroying. The program now operated in 23 cities, had helped over 50,000 individuals transition to legitimate lives, and had contributed to measurable reductions in recidivism rates across multiple states. But his proudest moment came when Maya joined him at the podium, their children and Mrs. Park watching from the front row, and he introduced her as the co-founder of everything they'd built together. Maya Rodriguez-Chun, he said, his voice carrying across the crowded auditorium, taught me that strength isn't about control, it's about service. That family isn't something to protect from the world, but something that empowers us to engage with the world more effectively. Everything we've accomplished, every life we've helped transform, started with her courage to trust that redemption was possible and her determination to build something bigger than just survival. Maya took the microphone, looking out at the faces of people whose struggles she understood intimately. 15 years ago, she began, I stood outside a motel in the rain with my 7-year-old daughter, both of us hungry and homeless and forgotten by a world that had no place for us. A stranger offered us somewhere to go, not just shelter, but a chance to build something meaningful together. Tonight, I see hundreds of families who've been offered that same chance, who've taken that same leap of faith, who've discovered that transformation is possible when we support each other through the process. The celebration continued late into the evening, with music and dancing and the kind of joy that comes from shared triumph over adversity. Alexander and Maya moved through the crowd, greeting families they'd helped, catching up with former colleagues who'd joined them in legitimate business ventures, accepting congratulations from officials and community leaders who'd witnessed their transformation from desperate individuals to effective advocates. But the moment that meant the most came when they returned home, children safely tucked into their beds, house quiet and secure around them. They sat together on the garden bench where they'd shared so many important conversations over the years, watching the city lights and reflecting on the long journey that had brought them to this point. Do you remember what you told me that first night in your study? Maya asked, when I was afraid to trust that your offer was real. You said love didn't make us weak. It reminded us what we were fighting for. Alexander smiled, remembering that conversation and how uncertain they'd both been about the future they were trying to build. I also told you that family wasn't a weakness to protect. It was a source of strength I'd never understood. I think I'm finally beginning to comprehend what I meant by that. Maya leaned against him, solid and warm and permanent in the way she'd been for 15 years of marriage and 20 years of love. Our family isn't just us, Alexander. It's everyone we've helped, everyone who's helped us, everyone who's been transformed by the work we do together. Sophia building houses for people who need homes. Gabriel planning to treat people's society as written off as hopeless. Daniel wanting to change laws that keep people trapped in cycles of poverty and crime. Isabella dreaming of healing children whose lives have been damaged by violence and neglect. We didn't just save ourselves, we built a legacy of saving others. They sat together until the stars came out. Two people who'd found each other in desperation and built something that extended far beyond their own happiness. Around them, the city hummed with the lives of millions of people struggling and striving and hoping for something better. Some of those people would find their way to the programs Alexander and Maya had created, would discover that transformation was possible, would learn that redemption could be earned through service to others. In the distance, sirens wailed as police and emergency responders dealt with the crises that never ended in any major city. But increasingly, those crises were being met with the kind of comprehensive support services that addressed root causes instead of just symptoms. Community centers instead of just prisons. Job training instead of just punishment. Family support instead of just separation. The work would continue, expanding and evolving as new challenges emerged and new opportunities developed. Their children would inherit not just wealth and privilege, but a commitment to using both for the benefit of others. The foundation and the rehabilitation program would outlive their founders, becoming permanent institutions that made transformation possible for future generations of people born into difficult circumstances. But that night, Maya Rodriguez Chun and Alexander Chun simply held each other and marveled at the journey that had brought them from desperate individuals to the founders of a movement that was changing lives across the country. They'd proven that love could indeed triumph over fear, that families could be built on choice rather than just biology, that redemption was possible for anyone willing to do the hard work of transformation. Somewhere in the city, a desperate woman might be standing in the rain with her children, whispering prayers for help into the storm. And if she found her way to the right resources, if she discovered the programs and services that Alexander and Maya had built, she might hear the answer they'd learned to give. You do have somewhere to go now. You do have people who will help you. You do have a chance to build something beautiful from the wreckage of what came before. What did you think of Maya and Alexander's complete story? Could you feel how their love grew stronger through every challenge? Which part moved you the most? The desperate beginning when Maya had nowhere to go, their first kiss in the garden, raising their children in safety and love, or watching their work expand to help thousands of other families. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories about second chances, redemption, and building something beautiful from broken pieces, smash that like button and subscribe for more inspiring romance stories every week. Remember, true transformation is possible when we choose love over fear, service over selfishness, and hope over despair. The greatest love stories aren't just about two people finding each other. They're about those two people using their love to make the world better for everyone around them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.